After spending several months with the Pixel Fold and several days with the OnePlus Open, there are several things that are immediately standing out to me about these two devices. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over my top 3 things that I prefer about the Pixel Fold and my top 3 things that I prefer about the OnePlus Open. Now, this is not like some super in-depth breakdown of these two devices. I did just post a camera comparison of these two if you want to see a little bit more in regard to comparing these two devices. But like I said, this is sort of a top-down view, just the 3 things on both sides that immediately and in a major way have stood out to me about these two devices. So let's start things off with the incumbent, the Pixel Fold. The number one thing that immediately stood out to me that I preferred about the Pixel Fold is going to be the form factor. As someone who believes that smartphones have just gotten entirely too large, the fact that the Pixel Fold basically gives me a miniature flagship smartphone, but with none of the drawbacks of a miniature flagship smartphone, because if you need a bigger screen, you also have that, makes me simply prefer this form factor. I love the way that this device feels. I love the size and the shape in particular. When you are split screening applications on this tablet screen, as you can see here, you get 2 really nicely proportioned applications that work really, really well. I also like the fact that the camera exists in a bar across the back, which means that when you set it on a table, it is completely stable. With the OnePlus Open, you get a lot more wobble of this device that you simply do not get with the Pixel Fold. I also feel like the OnePlus Open, just for me, is a little bit too big and it's a little bit too tall. And when I'm holding it, I can't really find a comfortable way to hold it because of this giant camera bump. Typically, I kind of use the pinky grip down here, and then this is resting right underneath the camera bump, and that's okay, but it makes it so that if I need to reach the top of the device, I have to kind of shift, and now I'm kind of supporting it with the camera bump alone, and then I kind of change fingers and come up. It just feels awkward to me. What I end up doing a lot now is just using the one-handed mode, which I just don't like using, but because of the size and shape of this device, the gigantic camera bump on the back, which you can see is covered in fingerprints, because a lot of the time it's just kind of where my fingers want to go. Sometimes I end up holding it like that if I'm shifting my grip. It's just hard to kind of one-hand this thing for me, which, you know, if you have bigger hands than me, probably not a big issue. But again, for me, I just prefer the form factor of the Pixel Fold. Now, I will put a caveat here. The weight is a big deal. The Pixel Fold is simply significantly heavier than the OnePlus Open, and that absolutely does aid the one-hand use of this device. I just wish it weren't quite as tall as it is. I'd gotten used to this thing, and now this just feels larger than I want it to be. But this is highly subjective. Sticking with something that is highly subjective for point number 2, and the first thing about the OnePlus Open that I prefer is actually the hinge. And we'll talk about the Pixel Fold first. The hinge on the Pixel Fold is really, really good. But after using the OnePlus Open, I'm finding myself just preferring this device's hinge because of one simple reason. With the Pixel Fold, as you open it, first off, it's very, very hard to start opening. Not as hard as a Z Fold with no case on, but it is a little bit more difficult than I would like. These magnets are quite strong. So once you get it open, it's very smooth. The friction is very consistent until you hit about right here, and it feels like it gets a little bit tighter for me. Maybe this is just my device, I don't know, but it feels a little bit tighter at this point. And then as you go to the fully opened position, you kind of feel an ever so slight relief of pressure right about there where it kind of wants to go the rest of the way. Very, very minor. But in general, you feel friction the entire way. Now, this is good because it means you can open it up into any orientation and it's going to stay in any posture that you open it up in. But for me, the fact that it stays with the same friction pretty much the entire way through, you wind up not really knowing when it's fully open. There is no sort of tactile click into place. And in fact, when it is fully opened, it may be not fully open, as you can see there, and you kind of want to push it a little bit further. And it's not a huge deal, right? It's not some massive problem. But when you compare it to the OnePlus Open, and I'm going to compare it specifically to this because my Z Fold was very similar. It also would often open not fully flat. With this thing, once you get it past about right here, it just wants to open up the rest of the way. And you can actually hear that it actually has sort of an assist, almost like a switchblade. Once this thing gets so far, it's just going to open up the rest of the way. It is perfectly flat. And for me, the thing I like the most about it is it has a tactility to it. It feels really, really nice. Whereas this, I hate to say it, just feels kind of mushy at the very end. The ending of this opening process just, it just kind of feels mushy now by comparison. Whereas this just feels energetic. It just flies open, flies apart. It's much easier to begin that open. And once it does open, boom, it just snaps into place. And it just feels good to me. It's got this tactile sensation. And I think that Google knows that tactile sensation is important because with the Pixel Fold, when you do open it now, you get a little slight haptic vibration on this device that's kind of replicating what this Hinge does just with the hardware. Now, I do want to say that if you're someone that uses laptop mode with your foldable devices often, you may heavily prefer the Pixel Fold then, because laptop mode is something you can kind of do with the OnePlus Open, but it needs to be pretty much at a 90-degree angle or less. If it goes any more than 90 degrees, it's getting pretty likely that it's going to just sort of flop the rest of the way open. I never use laptop mode at all, so for me, we're really just comparing how energetic and how tactile the opening feels, and because of that, that's why I'm leaning towards the OnePlus Open. Number 2 thing for the Pixel Fold is just going to be the software experience, and more specifically, the Pixel apps. I absolutely adore using this device. Everything just sort of works the way you'd expect it to. Everything is just so very consistent, and the added features are really, really hard for me to give up. I love features like now playing. I love features like the call screening or call waiting. One thing that's driving me crazy is with voice typing, which I use all the time. We'll start a keep note here, and what you'll see, when I click on the voice typing button, I can just sort of talk very naturally, and if I need to correct something or add punctuation manually, sometimes I'll reach out and put a period and then continue talking, and it just keeps going, period. It is very fast, comma, it is very accurate, and the fact that I can just keep talking, even if I use the keyboard, makes it so much better to use, period. Clear. 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 How good is that? With the OnePlus Open, you just don't get that sort of thing. If I reach up and touch the keyboard, it's going to stop listening. You don't have the ability to type out a sentence and then say delete or clear to actually edit anything. You can still do punctuations, but the voice typing is just so much better on these Pixel devices. There are lots of things about OnePlus's device that's really good, lots of really interesting software features, but most of it has at least 1 or 2 rough edges, whereas the Pixel device, everything that it's trying to do, it does really well, and most of it doesn't really need any sort of explainer because it's just simple. It makes sense. It is a more coherent, more consistent software experience. Even if maybe it can't do some of the things OnePlus can do, I so greatly appreciate how much more polished it is that I've got to say it's something that I miss. So thing number 2 for the OnePlus Open, it's going to be the screens, right? The screens on this device are some of the best screens I have ever had the pleasure of using. We're talking about brightness. We're talking about the clarity. We're talking about how little glare there is on the screen. Look at that, right into a light. Look how minimal that crease is as well. These screens are just, they're world beaters. They're some of the best screens on the planet. Let's look at this by comparison. Look how much more glare there is, how much bigger that crease is for those of you that do care about that. As you can see right now in daylight outside, looking at again at glare and the brightness, the OnePlus device is just far and away the better screen. And another big thing, I use sunglasses if I'm outside or if I'm driving. The Pixel Fold screen does something very strange with polarization on lenses, and it looks very odd. The OnePlus device does not have that. These screens are just the best. They're phenomenal. Every time I open this device and I go to use it, I cannot believe how good this screen looks, and it's something that I definitely prefer about the OnePlus Open. So thing number 3 about the Pixel Fold is something I really got used to using. I've got my Pixel stand in front of my computer, and I got to tell you guys, I miss dropping this thing down on the Pixel stand and using the wireless charging pucks that are around the house. This is not something that's like, oh, I don't have wireless charging, I can't use this device. But it's definitely something that I'm finding myself missing a lot more than I thought I was going to. But that kind of parlays into thing number 3 about the OnePlus Open, and that is the speed of charging. This thing, I believe, is supposed to top out at 30 watts. Realistically, it's usually in the low 20s. This thing charges at 67 watts, and as you can see on the screen right now, this thing charges so fast, you can actually watch it go up. It's absolutely unbelievably fast. This morning, I woke up and I think I had something like 29% battery left because I just didn't worry about charging it for the day overnight because I knew it didn't matter. I come into the studio, I plug it in, and we're like 30 minutes later and I'm at a full charge. It's just an insanely fast charging speed. Even though the battery life on these two devices are relatively similar, they're actually closer than you might think that they would be. Because of how fast this charging is, the battery life is almost irrelevant. Use it all day. Put 10 hours of screen on time on it. And as long as you have 20 minutes somewhere in your day to plug it into that charging brick that came in the box, you're going to get another full charge out of it. Because of that, again, battery life is pretty good here, but the charging speed is so good that it's like you basically can double your battery life compared to the Pixel Fold or even the Z Fold. Huge win for the OnePlus Open. Now guys, like I said earlier, I have posted a camera comparison between these two devices, and I've also posted a video going over the way multitasking works. Open Canvas is their system, how that works and compares to something like the Z Fold, and briefly at the end I do talk about the Pixel Fold as well, and of course, my full review of the OnePlus Open is still coming. I need a little bit more time with it. This is one of the most complicated devices I have probably ever reviewed, and because of that, I'm going to take my time kind of gathering my thoughts before I do post a review. And if I do post a review, when I post a review, I should say, it will be in this very same playlist, and you're going to want to be subscribed to this channel so that you don't miss it, guys. Tell me what you think in the comments down below about these two devices. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy.